everybody, this is Dyna here once again, and guess what? I'm back with the third tutorial review for the same day, because I need to get these characters out of my backlog pronto, because of course these are the most boring figures to review, and I'm fairly sure that the phrase, if you have one, you have them all, applies to them. So today's review is obviously going to be, or not today, this review is obviously going to be on what's in the title, which is the Ultraman Dyna Flash Type figure from all the way back in 1997. Now this is from the exact same figure lot that I received my Ultraman Dyna Miracle Type, as well as a whole slew of other figures from. So it's a touched up figure with no packaging, completely loose. So let's just get on to the detail of the figure. You can see one thing very clearly in that face: disappointment. The 1997 Ultraman Dyna figures are notoriously inaccurate in terms of their sculpt work, compared to the likes of Terranoid here. Spoilers. This head sculpt is barely acceptable. Now, for 1997, it was decent, but in this day and age, I'd say it's better to just abandon these figures altogether. Now, what's unique about this toy, however, is not only is the sculpting entirely kind of bizarre in terms of how bulky Dyna is, but also the color. Now, the red on the figure is, of course, just the bare plastic showing through, but that blue is very bizarre. It's a painted blue, but it does not match any of the blues that are found on the other Ultraman Dyna figures. For example, on Miracle Type here, this is the 1997 release, of course, the blue is actually much darker, and the blue would only get even more dark as we moved on to the 2000s. So I found that it was incredibly bizarre how weird this shade of blue is. The rest of the figure looks pretty much fine the way it is. Of course, the only issue is that he is overly muscular and he's got kind of a chunky looking face. But aside from those imperfections, I think this figure is completely passable as a standalone Ultra Hero Series release. Moving on to articulation, this is the part of the figure that is, of course, once you have one, you've seen them all. And not only does this apply to the Ultra Hero Series figures, this also applies to the Ultra Monster Series figures for most humanoids. So Dyna has two arms that rotate with decent sculptings for the fist inside, and a torso swivel. Now it is important to note that the sleeve carvings on this Dyna figure are identical to the ones that are found on the original Ultraman Dyna Miracle Type, as seen here. Now, if we zoom in for a quick comparison without having Miracle Type fall over, hopefully. The sleeves on both of these are sculpted exactly the same, whereas in the 2000 version, as I have noted in my previous review, the sculpt work was corrected to more closely match the suit and not to have such gigantic fists. But in reality, that is nothing but a really big tangent, because in the end, that doesn't really hold bar for anything in terms of the bad articulation of the figure itself. So let's move on to the second to last segment, size comparisons. Now, if you are like me and you know exactly what Bandai does with their toys, you can kind of tell that there is not a lot of toys that they've released that Dyna has taken on strictly in his Flash type that still maintains much of a difference otherwise. So let's just get some of the more basic figures out of the way. The ones that he faced off, that he defeated in Flash type, because Strong type is next. First off, let's take a look at Garaon. Of course, this was seen in episode 30, the scenario of invasion, where Dyna faced them strictly in Flash type, and of course this looks terrible. Without a lot of questions, there's a lot of things in here that are going to look fairly bad. One of the only other monsters that Dyna actually faced off strictly in Flash type is, of course, Sildron, and of course, being one of my favorites, it still doesn't excuse it for being a little too short. Now its width is obviously good enough, but that width doesn't exactly translate into height, now does it? And finally, for the last monster that we will show off, that Dyna faced strictly in his Flash type that is going to take up a lot of review space. It's Geronda. Now this is the 2009 version because I'm too lazy to get the 2000 version off of my shelf, and there is really no point. And of course this is completely wrong as well, but mainly because, again, Geronda has a lot of width but not a lot of height. In terms of a monster that I just forgot about, because I did, because I'm an idiot, let's move on to Zeruganoid from the third to last episode of Ultraman Dyna, whose episode name I forgot. And of course it looks kind of okay. Zeruganoid, since it is a humanoid figure, does have the advantage of being taller than usual. And finally, let's get on with the last figure, or second to last figure actually. That's a mandatory comparison. We're going to compare him with Monsarger. This is the 2000 release because my 1997 release is unavailable, and this is actually a good pairing, mainly because of how tall Monsarger is. Good for him. And finally, let's compare this Dyna with his newer, better, all-around, superior Ultra Act brethren. Now this Ultra Act is very beat up because yeah, it's been in my collection for a while, I've been using it for a while, and surprisingly the Ultra Act is also, it's slightly shorter, mainly because of the wider stands that his box gives him. Even if we squeeze the legs a little bit together, he's still like about a millimeter shorter than the vinyl. But as you can see, the blue on the vinyl figure is clearly off, and the sculpt work is clearly off as well, mainly with how small the shoulder design, the chest design is, and how small the collar timer is in comparison to what the actual design is. So in the end, I give this Flash type figure a 4 out of 5. Again, even though it is 1997, not 1970s, even though it is 1997, the sculpt work is still a little too far from being forgivable. And the other issue with this figure is that it's not really posed. Unlike its two brethren back here, which are also released the same year that just knocked them over because they're superior figures, these are actually posed figures that you can get a lot more playability out of versus the regular Dyna, which is now on the ground, and I have to pick them up again. Versus the regular form is just entirely bland in its execution. And again, I believe that even the Tiga figure of 1997 had a posed hand. Unfortunately, I cannot be sure of that fact. In fact, the more I think about it, the more I think I'm actually wrong. But in any case, it feels like this is a missed opportunity to have Bandai introduce this new hero as a very dynamic and versatile figure. You know, like his name suggests, the dynamic hero, the dynamite hero. He doesn't have a lot of the same factors that the other two types have over him. That really makes those two types better figures than this guy. But in any case, that's the review. I'm Yana9, and I'll see you guys next time.